Let's get ready to rumble!
Hello and welcome to Netflix vs. Cinema, the podcast that is back in, well, not quite isolation, but remote recording mode. My name is Tosin and I am your host. I have left the Isle of Wight where I was last week, and I am now ensconced in the middle of the country, far away from water, which actually at this time of the year might be a good thing with all the floods we're having. But yeah, boy, far away from water. And joining me on the Isle of Wight as always are Sharon.
Hello.
And Shaun.
Hiya.
Now, yes, as the name says, we're Netflix Cinema. We're a podcast in which we go to the cinema each week. We watch a couple of things at cinema, watch a couple of things at home on various streaming platforms. We just use Netflix to represent all of those. We give them all a score out of 5, and then we say, where was our money better spent this week? So, with that in mind, what have you guys been watching this week?
Well, it's quite funny, really. I thought I would have seen quite a lot, but I haven't really, I don't know where the time's gone, to be fair. What did I do? Oh, I did go to the Ventnor Fringe on Monday.
Oh, that's a Fringe festival on the Isle of Wight?
Yeah. Normally I would catch a movie then. I saw Old yesterday.
Oh, yeah, Old, yeah. The M. Night Shyamalan movie.
And TV-wise, I was trying to think. I mean, I know I've seen other stuff. But I just can't for the life of me remember. I need to write things down. But I did watch Aliens. Oh, that's a rewatch of Aliens. And sometimes, I've rewatched quite stuff. I've rewatched Midway, and a few others that have been on. So I'm quite happy to watch those. There are some films that I can watch again and again. Oh, and I know why the weekend I did. I should have sent you that, shouldn't I? I did the over the weekend. I did the Battle of Isla Anduana and the Battle of Rorke's Drift. Not as with little soldiers.
Well, you play. I was like, wait, what?
I don't know. I'll just see if this will work. I don't know if it will. But if I go on my gallery and let's see if we can do this one. See if we can get it. I'll just start it off. Go to the beginning.
Well, okay, so while Shaun is pulling that up, Sharon, how about you? What have you seen this week?
I went to the cinema and I saw Off the Rails.
Okay.
And then I also spent an evening in watching Kingdom, Ashin of the North.
Kingdom, Ashin of the North. This sounds all right because of sometimes we become cliches of ourselves. This sounds like you have gone on and watched something that was fantasy.
Well, it's fantasy horror.
Horror.
Well, it's Korean historic
Ooh.
fantasy horror.
A Korean fantasy horror.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Cool. Okay. Now you've
I'll tell you what. Tosin.
Yeah.
I could load this up to the YouTube channel, couldn't I?
Load what up?
I'll show you. But the thing is, I know it's copyright with music. I don't know how much you allow, whether it's 17 seconds or what. But
so what did you do? Did you rebuild something?
I don't know. Let's see if we can find. Oh, it's not very good.
Shaun, I think it's probably best to send it to me. Send it through to me.
Okay, I'll send it. Yeah, I will.
We'll see if we can put it up on Facebook or something.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Good stuff. So wait. So Sharon, you were saying a Korean?
Yes, we have reviewed the other Kingdom before. It's basically like a prequel story.
Oh,
the
Kingdom,
series.
Oh,
the Korean period zombie thing.
Yeah, the Korean period zombie horror thing. Yeah. And this is like almost like an origin story or a form of origin story for that franchise. Well, it's not a franchise. There's 2 seasons of it.
All right, cool.
It flagged up on my list, and I thought, I've watched the Kingdom, so I shall watch this sort of mini special on it.
All right, cool, good stuff. And with me, as I told you guys, because whenever it comes to anything that's been released that is animation-wise, Sharon's gonna give it a wide berth. Yeah, Sharon's gonna give it a wide berth. And so when I looked at the films that were out and available this week, I realized that the chips had fallen where the chips had fallen, and that meant that I had to go watch Space Jam: A New Legacy. So at the cinema, more on that later. And at home on Netflix, I finished off watching a series called The Kominsky Method with Michael Douglas and Alan Arkin. So now, let's kick off because I think the big thing this week is old. Old is the big noise this week. So Shaun, you want to kick off and tell us what is old about, or how? Well, yeah, tell us. Old.
Okay, so old starts off with this family in a car. They've been sort of chosen for this destination. They were lucky. They've been picked in a lottery to go to this idyllic resort with everything you could want. And
so Fantasy Island. Well, yeah.
So Fantasy Island, yeah. So they turn up and they're given cocktails and say, "Oh, we've done cocktails. These are special cocktails for you and stuff." And there's other people that are going and they say, "Oh, what we're going to do, there's this absolutely fabulous deserted beach, which only certain people know about. There's only certain people know about. So we're going to get our driver to take you there to this sort of hidden, beautiful beach." And there's this young lad. He's part of he's like the nephew of the guy who's running the resort.
Yep.
And he sort of passed one to the young lad, and he sort of passes him a code thing anyway, like that. But so that's at the start. So they've taken off to this island you've got a doctor and his wife. You've got like a rapper and his girlfriend. You've got this family. You've got the doctor's daughter.
So you've got various assortment of fodder.
Yeah, very, very source man of fodder. And obviously, like the thing says, and like probably not given away in the trailers, strange things start to happen. And it is a lovely beach. It's a lovely sort of super beach. And but they start some really, really strange things start to happen, And
and I think everything from the poster to the trailer say that essentially you go to this beach and you age prematurely.
Yeah, you sort of age. I can't remember the exact time they said, but like for every 17 minutes, it's like 2 years. So
okay.
So it's pretty fast. But the thing is, there are some advantages because like if you get cut, it just sort of heals up. But you still have the scar, but it like heals up within.
All right.
Like it's like whoa, chopped, cut,
okay.
And then it's like oh right, okay, well that's healed. So.
All right. Okay. So I have a question here. That's the basic premise of the film. Do they ever explain why they don't just leave the beach if you realize that once you're on this beach you start getting old? Because that was the question that I was like, why don't you just leave the beach?
Yeah. Well, they do try in various ways to get off the beach. They do because obviously they know something's wrong. So there's people, how are we going to want to get off? Basically, they go through a canyon. And when they try to go back through the canyon, it just like they can't because it just knocks them out, and then they. Yeah.
All right. Okay. Okay. So that's the basic premise. And,
yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like once you have the basic premise, okay, a film, people on the beach, if they're still on the beach, they get old.
That's it.
What do they do with the premise? Is it used well? Now, this is where I want to get Shaun's reaction now because.
Yeah, Shaun's reaction. It's quite funny. It is used. I think it's used quite well to start with, but then things start to as the film progresses, there's a few sort of silly odds and sods which I think but not enough to detract from the film. But yeah, there's certainly moments where it's like, well, how did that happen? How did this happen? You can understand how, because there is there's a few harrowing moments in it because let's just say obviously some of the people that are on this beach that they have issues as well. They've got issues. So
yeah.
And they've obviously all been like this group of people have been selected for something, obviously, or they've been chosen for whatever. So
in my head it seems a bit like a slasher movie, but the slasher is time.
Yeah, that's it. And there is a little bit of slasher moments in there with quite extreme violent moments. But yeah, it's a really, really interesting film. And yeah, I mean, as I say, the ending, well, but we can always talk about things like that. But I can be forgiven this time. I can forgive the film. Yeah. And it's quite a novel ending. And obviously the young lad that gave the code, you know, is there is something in that. So
well, obviously it's an M. Night Shyamalan film, right? And
yes,
he is known for his twist endings, or he's known for his endings.
yeah, it's not a huge twist. It's not a huge twist, but it is a twist. But
Yeah,
it's not like a whoa twist. It's all right, okay.
But usually, almost without fail, in his films, when his endings change the way you see the whole, or the color the way you see the film. So the ending either means, oh yeah, great, or the ending makes you think, oh my god, that was rubbish. So with all that, with the M. Night Shyamalan high concept kind of twist ending, all that, how many stars did you end up giving Old?
Okay, well, this was I don't know. It's difficult. I was trying to think this. It was one of those films. I come out of the Shyamalan. It's like you know, Mother, and there's films like that, and it takes me a while to digest them. It sort of probably take me a day, but I think this is going to get a really, really, really high 3. I think a really, really high 3 on the cusp of a 4.
Oh,
but,
good.
Oh, well, that is encouraging, actually.
Yeah. So
you know how sometimes, as you said, Toast, with his films, they're either almost like mini works of genius, or they just fail utterly.
Yeah, exactly.
He doesn't seem to have a middle ground, does he? So this maybe is one of his middle grounds then. But you know, he really had like this sort of mini renaissance with the Split.
With Split, it's Split, yeah.
The other one, I've forgotten what it was called.
Glass.
Glass, that's it. Where he seemed to be like, yes, he's back, and he's delivering quality stuff again.
Yeah,
well, the thing with him is, I always think that with him, whatever happens, he doesn't just go for the middle ground. He does try and do something. You might not like what he does, but he does try and do something that you look at and go, "Oh, that's different."
Yeah, as I say, it was, you know, it kept me entertained, as I didn't have huge amounts of issues with it, but I mean, I'll tell you about it off screen, the ones that I did have, but otherwise it might be spoilerific, and we don't.
You make me more inclined to want to go and see it than
we do have like with our rating system, we do have sort of flexibility, because we have like a mid, a high, and don't we really?
We have like each number is a spectrum. Each number is a spectrum. Apart from a 2, I don't think we've ever had a high 2. I think we just
I don't think we never have. No, we
never had a high 2 or a high 1. Oh, it's like no, couldn't stand it. It's just about redeemable.
I did have a high 1 with Rambo. I wouldn't have given it any points at all, but I think because we had to give it something, it scraped up for 1, so that was a high 1.
That was a high 0.
High 0. That's funny, Sharon. You'll be horrified at me, but actually, it was on TV. That was one of the ones. That's one of the things I've watched again.
You rewatched?
I rewatched it.
What, Rambo: Last Blood?
To see how
it really was as awful as this.
Okay, so at the moment, I have to say, okay, I've got to give a shout out now to my cousin. So this is one of those good weeks where I found out that we actually have listeners that we haven't paid. Yeah, that we haven't paid, that we haven't cajoled, that we haven't put in a headlock to listen to us. We have listeners, because I got a message from my cousin, Taiwo, who has gotten in touch with the church with us before, and he was talking about the fact that he got in touch with us before to say, oh my God, you were right about the Gerald Butler movie, Greenland. You're right. And he was the one who was talking about the fact that for like 20 years, I wasn't allowed to pick films because I picked one film that nobody liked when they wanted to see something blowing up. And he got back in touch going, "Where's the podcast? You missed a week." And I was like, and I was like, we did miss a week. I didn't think anybody would notice, but no. He was like, "Where is it?" Oh, but it's okay. From your Facebook, I can see that you're on holiday, so I'll let you off. But bring my podcast. I want to listen to it when I'm on my tube on the way to work. So we have a listener. So I went back to listen to one of the shows. Where I gave him a shout out because he didn't know he hadn't listened to that episode, and I told him, okay, this is the episode, go listen. We actually gave you a shout out. So Taiwo, this is another one. We gave you a shout out. If you don't get back in touch with me, I know you don't listen to every single episode, and you're caught.
All the way through.
Yes, you don't listen to
you're
all
like
the way
3
through.
minutes and you're gone.
Yeah. So but on that one, we said that Shaun, you have a tendency to mellow the second time you watch a film.
I do, actually, surprisingly.
Yeah, and this is what is playing out again. Sean Mellon, because I remember when Rambo Last Blood was released, and Sharon wasn't actually, you couldn't make it, but you felt so strongly about this film. You sent us an email
I
review.
emailed you
We
to
did,
say how
yeah,
much
yeah,
I
yeah, yeah,
despise that film. Yeah.
You sent us an email review to talk about Rambo Last Blood, to talk about how much you didn't like that film. Yeah, so and now Sean has watched it again, and Sean has kind of mellowed. It's the effect of the small screen. The effect of the small screen makes Sean a bit more mellowed. All right, cool. So now let's move forward. And that is kicking off with the cinema section with Old with 3 stars. And now we go on to Kingdom, Ashlyn of the North.
Ashin of the North, yeah.
Ashin of the North. Now this was okay. The second you say Korean, I have like my ears prick up because there is some really good stuff coming out of Korea. Some really good, yeah. I mean, once
Definitely.
you go past the K dramas, which are essentially, they're soap operas and everything like that, which have a really, really big following, but not my cup of tea. But apart from that, when you say, oh, Korean zombie, I'm like, ooh, historical, ooh, all of a sudden. So, Sharon, do you want to tell us about Kingdom, Ashin of the North?
Yeah, so it is set in the world of the kingdoms. There's 2 series of kingdom, or basically set in historical Korea. I don't know exactly what period, but I imagine it's something like 15th or 16th century. So the equivalent to would be like the age of the samurai if it was in,
So around about the same time as feudal Japan.
yes, that
Okay.
you get the feeling it's that similar sort of, some of the clothing and the look of it is about that sort of era.
Yep.
By my own sort of ignorant guessing. And so it's got really, really high production values. And so that world is basically it's imperial Korea, where there's the emperor and all of his court, and it's very formal. And this is like a prequel to the Korean series, which culminated in basically a form of zombie virus that sort of escapes and causes mayhem. And you see how they tackle it. And this sort of predates that. And basically, it starts off where we meet Ashin, who is a young girl. She's from like an ethnic group within Korea who is not widely recognized as being, Korean people, but they are an ethnic group that live there just south of the Chinese border. And her father is basically living in this village, but he is a spy for the Korean local warlords. And he spies on this sort of this community. And he every now and then he reports back to his overlords. And then she has observing this, and he's saying there's tension brewing between sort of rival factions within Korea and across the borders that's building up. And her father has basically been sent in to spy on what's going on. And she doesn't know this at the time, but he is betrayed. And she is basically affected, and her village is destroyed, the village that she has been living in, even though she's not part of that ethnic group.
Yeah.
And then she flees to the overlord to get vengeance. And so she starts to work for him. And then she begins to realize that all is not as it seems. And while she was hunting in the forest, because she's one of these girls who was like, she would hunt for a family, she would track, and she would, she was, very fit and athletic, and has trained herself in martial arts and in archery and other things. She has discovered this secret cave where this plant that creates the zombie can be found. And on the wall, there's this inscription saying, this plant, and with illustrations, this plant will raise the dead, but there is a price to pay. And so she has kept one of these flowers, one of these plants with her, just in case. Originally, she was going to use it because her mother was ill. And she said, well, if we use the plant, we won't lose our mum. And then when her village is destroyed, she then keeps it thinking, well, you know what? I've got this if I need it. And so I don't want to give too much more away, but you then see how she then decides when and how she is going to use this plant and against whom.
But the fact that we end up having a sequel to this that has zombies everywhere, well, yeah, it kind of tells you.
I think I reviewed the first one, didn't I?
I'm
pretty certain I reviewed the first one. And I've actually, now Sharon said this, I watched this just before the pandemic, when I was at that late, just before the lockdown. I actually saw this series because I liked the first one so much.
Yeah, so they did one of the first series last year. And I think it was so popular internationally that they were quite quick to get season 2 made. And then this is almost like a third installment, but it's called like a Kingdom episode, but it's like an hour and a half long, so it's like a feature length.
Oh, okay. So
episode.
it's pretty much like a film.
So
Yeah.
perhaps I haven't seen this then.
So this is called it's called Kingdom Ashin of the North, a Kingdom
Okay.
special episode. So it's like a feature length episode. So they're about an hour long. This is slightly longer. This is about an hour and a half. So it's like a feature length story.
Oh, wow.
Right, so now spill the tea. What did you think of it?
I thought the production values were amazing. My only reservations basically were because they dealt with the politics of the time. I think if you know your Korean history and if you know your history between the rivalry between sort of Japan and Korea and China, the different ethnic groups that make up, the different parts of Korea, I think I'd have a greater understanding of it. But I felt sometimes like there were like 3 or 4 different ethnic groups all basically vying with each other, and they had a different look, and they were saying, oh yeah, these people they do this, and these people they do this, and I was thinking, because to me it sounded exactly the same.
Yeah.
I was just thinking, I'm getting a bit confused as to who is who here, and what's what. But saying that, the story was very good, and it keep me engaged all the way through. And I genuinely did not see the ending, even though I knew it. I was thinking, how does it tie in with the actual Kingdom series? You don't find out till the very, very end, and I hadn't worked it out at all. So it really, to me, it worked as a standalone. As an introduction to the Kingdom, I think it would be you could come at it from having seen the series, you could come at it, or you could see it first and then lead it on to the series. So I don't think it matters which order you see it in, which is, I think, all credit to it, because sometimes these special ones are so dependent upon you having an understanding of the world in which they inhabit, but this doesn't. So you could come at this fresh from this point and you'd still enjoy it. Well, I thought it was very good. I would give it a definite 4. Quite firmly in the 4 camp.
So good. So the Kingdom series, it doesn't embarrass its stablemates. It continues on.
No, not at all.
All right, cool. And now we we go back to cinemas, and we go back to the film that by elimination I ended up with. Now this is a film that I didn't particularly want to watch, because it's a film that I did not have high hopes for. It's a film that I thought was going to eventually. I looked at this film and I thought, everything that this film is going to be, just by looking at the poster, just by hearing the name. And the film is Space Jam: A New Legacy. So obviously this is kind of like a sort of sequel to Space Jam, which was the film that put Michael Jordan as the basketball great in the film with Looney Tunes. Now, those are 2 things I like separately. Michael Jordan, basketball, Looney Tunes, put them together. I was never really sure about it. And this is a film that obviously we have LeBron James, who is looked at the new sort of like, greatest of all time, or the greatest talent of his generation. And they've put him in the film, and they've said, okay, we're going to redo that formula. And I would say it doesn't work, but I think it works for who they want it to work for. So for kids who are going to go watch this film, who like basketball, who like LeBron James, I think it will work. But this is the kind of film in which they try and give you a storyline, and the film kicks off, and you can see that they're trying to put all this storyline into it, and you're like, oh my God, you're actually trying to put a storyline. Why are you trying to put a storyline? Because it starts off with LeBron James's childhood and how he has to throw away a Game Boy and stop playing Looney Tunes so he could focus on basketball. Then when he grows older, he's a dad now, and he's trying to get his sons to focus on basketball. And it's from the word go, it's like from the first scene, you can just sort of see, this is the arc that's going to happen. This is where it's going to end up. This is what this film is going to be. Now, LeBron James, the first time I ever saw him act was in a film called Trainwreck, with the Amy Schumer film, and he was surprisingly good in Trainwreck. Like, I remember watching Trainwreck, I'm really thinking, he is like the secret weapon of this film. He was actually really quite funny in it, and it seems like he can do comedy but not so much drama. And there's even and this film is so this one was made by Warner Brothers, because Warner Brothers own the Looney Tune, and this entire film is like it is a barely disguised advert for Warner Brothers, The entire film is it's a barely disguised advert for Warner Brothers saying, "How great are Warner Brothers? Look how wonderful we are." So there's a bit where the Warner Brothers guys they call him over to the office, and the Warner Brothers and they have people like Sarah Silverman playing Warner Brothers. They have Stephen Yeun. Stephen Yeun shows up, and they have all these people playing cameos in tiny roles that doesn't do anything for them. But so they say, "Oh, LeBron, we've come with this amazing idea. We've come with this amazing idea that we can scan you and we can put you into a whole bunch of different films." And LeBron James says this line, which is supposed to be funny, but ends up being a bit too prescient. Which is where he says, look, I'm an athlete. I want to play on the court. I want to do my talking on the court. It's like putting athletes into acting that never goes well. And you can see why they wrote that line. You can see that it's supposed to be funny. It's supposed to be nudge, nudge, wink, wink. But it is. You're looking at this film going, yeah, because this happens about 20 minutes in, and I'm looking and going, yeah, this is not going well. This isn't going well. The bad guy of the film is an algorithm, and this is where it gets like total advert for Warner Brothers. The bad guy of the film is an algorithm within something called the serververse. And the serververse is essentially the big computer at Warner Brothers. So he is within the computers at Warner Brothers. And when LeBron James says he doesn't like the idea that the algorithm has come up with, the algorithm gets all annoyed and decides, I'm going to take over the world, and then pulls LeBron James and his son into the computer.
Wow.
Yeah, and then when they go into the computer, they start going around to the different areas of the different worlds within the serververse. So there's Harry Potter world. Who makes Harry Potter movies? Warner Brothers. There's the Matrix world. Who made the Matrix movies? Warner Brothers. There's the Looney Tunes world. Who makes that? Warner Brothers. There's Casablanca world. Who makes that? Warner Brothers. So you have all these bits where it's essentially just like an advert. So they go to DC world because obviously Warner Brothers does all the DC movies and all that sort of stuff. And you have like, they go into a Batman thing, they go into a Superman thing, and it's just like an advert for Warner Brothers saying, look how much stuff we own. Look how great it is. And obviously because it's a Space Jam movie, it's going to culminate in a basketball game. And the basketball game, not the basketball itself, but the way they do the basketball game is when the one spark of joy I got from this film happened. Because they're in the serververse, this algorithm, who is called Al G Rhythm, played by Don Cheadle, of all people, so he decides that he's going to call everybody to come watch this basketball game that's going to decide the fate of the serververse. He's like, come on along, everybody, come watch this basketball game. And they call all of the characters that Warner Brothers have. So you have this basketball game, and I think I wasn't watching the basketball game. I was ignoring. I was looking in the background to see what characters showed up. So King Kong shows up. I'm like, yes. The Iron Giant shows up. I'm like, yes. And it does a similar trick to what you remember Ready Player One?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Where you have that bit where you have all these characters and you have like, oh my God, it's effing Chucky. And it's like, and it does, the difference is that Ready Player One is not as blatant. It's not as blatant product placement thing. This is set at Warner Brothers, made by Warner Brothers, in the Warner Brothers computer. But you're looking in the background and like the Flintstones show up and the Jetsons show up, and there's all these more obscure characters there's really, really obscure characters that I don't expect anybody to know apart from me. Have you guys ever heard of a cartoon called Jabberjaw?
No.
He is a talking shark. Jabberjaw is in the background. I'm like, oh my God, it's Jabberjaw! Jabberjaw's in the background! And then you have like, Foghorn Leghorn, and you have all the guys from the Wacky Races and all the people from the Hanna-Barbera cartoons are just in the background cheering. Then you have the Agent Smith from the Matrix. You have like those sort of like agents in the background. You have the Whites from Game of Thrones. The Night King is just sort of standing in the background watching a basketball game.
That sounds like that sounds it's just like wait for it to come on video and watch the end bit.
Honestly, that's the only thing. Yeah. I want to go back and pause this thing, freeze frame, and see who is it in the background and identify who's in the background. That bit was absolute joy. Notifying who it was in the background watching this basketball game for me was absolute joy. Apart from that, the rest of the film was it was bad acting. It was hackneyed storyline. It was made for kids in the worst possible way.
Right.
It was made for kids in the worst possible way, and I don't think I can give it anything higher than a 2. And one of those stars is merely for the joy I had looking at all the
the
background
end.
characters
Yeah,
in
that's
this basketball game. That's it.
Excellent.
I don't think there's a joke in this film that lands. There is not a joke in this film that lands. And there's even one bit that they do. Because obviously the original one has Michael Jordan in it. There's a bit where they do something about, oh, Michael Jordan. And I spotted exactly what they were doing. I was like, this is what's going to happen. And exactly that happened. And when it happened, it couldn't even be called the punchline. So yeah, I'm sorry, 2 out of 3. 2 out of 5. And so now we move back to Netflix and Friends. And now this is something that, Shaun, we need to reinstate a rule. We need to reinstate our Netflix and cinema rules, because obviously we have let them we let them lie a bit, because it's been a hard 18 months for people, and we thought, you know what, it's what's the point of doing this? We have a show called Netflix and Cinema, and we don't even have any cinema, so even this title of a show has been made a nonsense of. So we might as well just let everything go in. But our usual rules for Netflix and Cinema is that if you're going to watch something at home, if you're going to watch a TV series, you have to finish watching the entire series. You can't just come in here on 3 episodes out of 10 and say, "Oh, I think it's brilliant." No, you have to watch the entire series. The other one was that if you're watching something at home, it has to be something you haven't seen before.
Yeah, I know.
I can't remember what the third one was.
If you're watching a series, you have to watch all of the parts.
I already said that.
You said that bit.
Yeah, I'm sure that there's something else. There was one other rule that we had, which obviously was so important that we've forgotten what it was.
We'll have to revise the rules. But yeah, no, I agree. I need to do. We do need to look at some.
Yeah. So we'll let this one go, because this is the final one. You watched Aliens.
I watched something else on Netflix that has finally come to me as well. I mean, Aliens is just going to be. Aliens is just like one of the greatest films ever. So
exactly.
Enough said.
I mean, the second you bring Aliens out, that's kind of like a game over.
Basically, the reason I picked Aliens out was because I've got this game, Aliens: Another Glorious Day in the Core. And
it's just kind of like a board game.
Like a board game, yeah. It's a board game. And I mean, I have played it. I've played it with friends, and I kept going on about how great this game was, because it's just like the movie, and I want Sharon to play it. And sometime it would be great and you've got all the characters in there. You've got your Vasquez. I like being Vasquez personally, because she's pretty good.
Because Vasquez is a badass.
She is a badass. Yeah. Anyway, so I go back. I shall swap it now just for, I watched a short documentary on Netflix.
Oh, so we're pulling Aliens.
So we're going to pull Aliens, because I think that's a bit unfair, because that was one of our rules. And I've had this. But we'll stick with Aliens. Right. So I'm going to go for this Goodbye Saigon.
All right, Goodbye Saigon. Okay,
Goodbye Saigon.
But just to say, the reason why you got the board game Aliens is because you have recently retired for the second time, and you should see Shaun's hoard. Shaun has a hoard of stuff that people gave Shaun when he retired, just to show you how much he is loved. Either how much he is loved or how much they don't want him to come back. So it's one of the two. And part of this hoard was Aliens: A Glorious Day in the Core.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, Toes, is I will send you the links, and maybe you can post them on the Facebook page, because I've got a picture of the things I've got. So
yeah. Send me the picture.
I also got a Jaws game as well, which to rewatch. But I think, to be fair with the rules, I just, because you nailed it, you've seen something on the streaming platform, and this was actually on Netflix, which I managed to watch.
Okay.
So I'm going to do this one.
Goodbye Saigon.
Goodbye Saigon. Yeah.
All right, cool. So tell us, what is Goodbye Saigon about?
Okay, it's basically a documentary about this band that they were a European band, and they signed on for this contract. They signed a contract, but they ended up going to Vietnam in the middle of, like, as the Vietnam War was starting to finish. And it's basically, as I say, it's a documentary. It's subtitled a lot of the time, but it just shows lots and lots of footage of Vietnam about. So it goes between these people being interviewed, and then it shows you clips of different parts of retreats. Some of the nasty things, and I mean, I'm really into my Vietnam War stuff. So, but it was what can we say about it? It's just basically that. It's just basically a montage of clips intersped with interviews. But
the driving force of the story is a band
that ended up
getting drafted.
Well, not drafted as such, but just they signed this contract to actually go to and perform for like the USO, perform in Vietnam.
Oh, like a USO thing.
Yeah, like a USO thing. So they ended up, and of course, this is intercut with all the hippies and all the riots and all the demonstrations
and all the protests against the Vietnam War. Yeah,
and it's basically a montage of clips of what was going on at that particular time and how frightened they were, because they didn't really know when they was over there, and there's all this stuff going on, and how scared. Yeah. And it's I mean, any stuff like that, I'm fascinated by Vietnam for some reason, because it's like one of the most filmed wars ever. And I mean, after that conflict, they've never ever allowed, they've all been stage managed, haven't they, really, from the Falklands War to the Gulf War, whereas this was just any foreign journalist could go over there and film anything and do anything. And there's some really quite nasty footage, as we know. So yeah, but that's basically the film. It is a documentary with a montage of clips with a few interviews about how people felt, what happened, what it was like over there. And it's for me, it was very, very watchable as a Netflix thing.
All right. So compared to Ken Burns' The Vietnam War.
Yeah, no, it doesn't quite reach those heights. It doesn't quite reach those heights because being a foreign film and being subtitled, there was that sort of detracted slightly away from it. So but it'd be worth. I mean, you can see it. You can actually see it on Netflix. So it is a Netflix.
Was this band American, or was the band?
No. It was European. It was European. So I think it was a bit of a mixture of like Norway, Swedish, Dutch, right. Mainly Dutch. So yeah, and that was where the conflict was. I think was where they just signed a contract, and they just ended up sort of shooting. Are you all right, Toe?
Yeah, I'm fine. Sorry, it's just that the weather's been weird, and all of us, it was raining and it was dark, and it would look like the Independence Day ship was about to come out from behind a cloud, and all of a sudden now it's blinding sunshine.
Yeah.
While it's still raining.
Wow. Yeah, it looks like it's a glorious sunshine there.
Yeah, but I can still see raindrops falling outside my window right now. But so yeah, anyway.
So this would not be like for me, it would not be like a Ken Burns documentary or something. But I just really fascinated. With the Vietnam War and some footage. And there's also in this particular one, there's one like the retreat from towards the end, and there's footage in this that I haven't seen before. So and I mean I've watched a lot of Vietnam War footage, but in this, so it must be from. I got a feeling it's probably from, French journalists or.
So the band were documented their time there, so it was kind of like a insider's view.
Yeah, insider's view. Yeah, with intersped with lots and lots and lots of clips. Most of the time, it was just like clips of Vietnam, of soldiers, of civilians, of the battles, of like people, just the mayhem, really, just absolutely crazy mayhem.
And so with all how many stars would you give it?
On the whole, I'd probably give this a 3-star. I didn't think it was. It wouldn't be, unless you're interested in the Vietnam War and you like watching footage of Vietnam and riots, it probably wouldn't be.
Well, it wouldn't tell you much that you didn't know.
Yeah, that you didn't already know. But it was interesting for me to see some of the clips that I hadn't seen before. So yeah, so I gets a 3-star. Gets a 3-star. And the reason I think that's fairer actually to do a Netflix thing rather than Aliens, because otherwise, Aliens for me is going to get a 5-star.
Yeah, Aliens is going to be a 5. I mean,
so that would be a bit unfair. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Oh yeah, good point. Oh, I can't believe I missed that. I can't believe I totally
What's
missed
that?
that. That's why Sharon just pointed out what I should have said. It's like once you pick Alien, it's game over, man. Game over.
Yeah. So I mean, it is iconic. I must have watched it so many times, and it's so quotable. That's what we do all the time now. And now we might get Dan interested, so he can join in the game.
Cool.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Okay.
All right, cool. And now with that, we now go to our final film in the cinema. And Sharon, this is you. And you saw something called Off the Rails, a film I didn't even hear about.
I'm looking forward to this, actually, because I did look at this one.
Yeah,
Okay,
this is a British film.
Yep.
It's a British film. Basically, the premise it starts off with is there are four friends who've been pals. They're all women in their sort of late 40s, early 50s. They've been friends since their girlhood, and the four of them have just been pals. And in their 20s, they did a road trip across Europe.
Is this the Blondie musical?
Yeah, the Blondie musical.
Oh, all right, cool, good.
And so they did it while on the trains. They got a train ticket, so they travelled across Europe in their 20s. And the film opens up basically with the news that one of the four has died of cancer, and she has left them to say, that we never got to do what we want to do, which was to go to Parma Cathedral to watch God's disco ball, which is basically, there's this phenomenon that only happens at certain times of the year when the light is right, where the sun hits the stained glass windows and it creates like this natural disco ball effect in the sky. And it's known as like God's disco ball. And they said they missed it because they missed the boat all those years ago. And she said, I'm going to leave you, as this is my will to you, I'm going to give you this as my last request. Finish the journey, go to it, go do it. And here's the tickets to do it. I'm paying for you to go and do this as in my memory and to celebrate the friendship we had. And her 18-year-old daughter basically takes her place. And so the four of the friends, an American actress, a doctor who's overworked and a little bit stressed, and a single woman who is looking after her dad, who's now in a retirement home and worrying about money. So these three sort of friends who've been friends since school, but have sort of their waves have parted a little way, then set off on this journey to recreate this sort of idyllic summer of their youth.
Yeah.
We're starting off sort of before they went by ferry, but this time they go on the Eurotunnel to Paris, and then they make their way down through Spain to cross over on the boat on the ferry to go to Parma, and then to see this phenomenon. And so that's it. Basically, you see them, they have their adventures and their misadventures as they travel, and they reveal their darkest secrets, and they have these adventures on the way.
Oh, okay. So that's about it. And I have to admit, because I say I hadn't heard of this film, but literally about 2 days ago, I saw a poster, and it said featuring the music of Blondie, and I felt like, well, that's a film that's been made by algorithm, because you're like, let's see, people liked Mamma Mia, so let's get this music for a certain kind of thing. Let's make it a bit nostalgic because the music will be nostalgic, and it's aimed for the people who would have been listening to Blondie fresh the first time around.
Yes,
So
aimed at women my age. So yes, it was my age, because Blondie was everywhere when in the sort of late 70s, early 80s, during my sort of formative years, as it were. So yes, it was targeted at we sort of,
Yeah. So I feel like it's a film that has been a film that has been engineered to take money from a certain group of people.
Yes,
so,
and the audience basically was it was that demographic. The whole everyone in a cinema. You look around, you're thinking, yep. I would guarantee that everyone in here went to school in the 1980s.
Or probably tried to copy Debbie Harry's fashion. So, so we know that you're gonna like the songs. We know you're gonna like the songs. And with these films, I don't even though it's a film that's engineered to take your money. I mean, most films are, but this one particularly seems quite cynical to me.
Yeah.
The question is, did they do a good job in it? Did they give you something worth your money?
Well, sadly for me, I didn't think it flew. I thought I got the idea that they wanted it to do, but for me, it just didn't have that ring of truth about it.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm all for sort of films that celebrate women's friendships, but it all seemed a little bit contrived, I have to say. The sort of the secrets in the part, they set up a lot of stuff, like the woman, the great cast, Jenny Seagrove was the one who's never married, never had children.
Yeah.
But she was looking after her dad, and it was like basically she was struggling to pay for his bills.
Yeah.
That was like thrown in there, but then they did nothing with it. The American actress played by Kelly Preston in her last film role, I believe. She was struggling with alcoholism. She's been playing a nurse in like a general hospital type soap opera for years.
Yeah.
and she was getting tired of it, but she didn't know what she doesn't want to leave the job because it's how she earns her money. But she was like in a messy divorce with trying to get custody of her son. Again, that's thrown in there, but again, they didn't really. It was a bit clumsy what they did with that. Sally Phillips plays like the overworked doctor who's been married her school sweetheart basically. So she's never been with anyone else, never had any other sort of lasting relationship. And then things start happening in that relationship. And again, you think it's a little bit
by the numbers.
And and they these cameos like Franco Nero appears as this
Oh yeah, he's gonna some
Italian.
Italian Lothario that one of them might possibly have a romance with.
Exactly. And then Jeff Miller turns up as someone who decides that he was an accountant in Britain, that he's going to sort of throw caution to the winds and sort of live in Spain. And so he basically was like an accountant in Spain.
Yeah. So at the end of it, how many stars would you give it?
I was struggling to like. I wanted to like it. That's the thing about some of these films. You think I want to feel that joy that these women have to go, because I've had these friendships with people that go back 20 years. So I wanted to like it, but I smiled in a few places, but I didn't laugh at all.
Oh, yeah.
So I would say, to be fair, I would give it a 2. Because
wow! I'm glad you, because
to be fair, I mean, I would say to be generous, I'd give it a 3. But to be honest with you, it just did not. I didn't believe any of it. I didn't believe any of the women. I didn't believe in their friendship, and I didn't believe the people they met. And there's a few scenarios where you're thinking that just would not happen. That would not happen.
Yeah, that's a bit like me. That's a Shawnee trait. That is.
Yeah.
so even though it's a musical, it doesn't carry you away enough for you to just suspend.
Well, they don't actually sing. It's just there's just a soundtrack is Blondie song. So
what? They don't
it's
sing.
Not musical. I know. So there's no. It's just literally when they're in the train, you hear Blondie songs playing, and every now and then they'll play like "Oh Sunday Girl," and so there's no. The cast don't sing. The cast don't.
That's terrible.
No, it is. It's just like a Blondie soundtrack. It's no. You wouldn't call it a musical by any stretch.
That's a bit like, the film Last Christmas, the one with Emilia Clarke and Henry Golden in it. How they were making a big deal about the fact that this was all inspired by the music of Wham and all that. And then you watch the film and there's no, apart from the title, there's nothing to say. Okay, that's annoyed me.
One karaoke song. To give it fair, they do sing one karaoke song, a Blondie song at this drag bar with karaoke. And so... No, I wanted to like it, but I just there wasn't enough substance to it. It just did not. There's no ring of truth to it. And I think if you're going to have honest filmmaking and you want to write stories about women's friendships that endure for years, you need to be truthful. And this felt like it was just what written by committee, where they wanted to make it. This would be funny. Let's do this. That'd be funny. It just wasn't. So I'm sorry. Sorry, off the rails.
Yeah. It sounds to be like, because I looked at the post and I went, this has been made by people who thought, well, they like Mamma Mia, they should like this.
It bounces like this, yeah.
All right, okay, so now we go into a final thing, which is at Netflix. And looking at the scores at the moment, this film what I'm going to talk about is going to have to bomb terribly to give cinema a chance this week. It's going to have to be like, one of the worst things I've ever watched to give cinema a chance this week. Unfortunately for cinema, this is not one of the worst things I've ever watched. This is one of the things that I think you look at Netflix and you say, right, Netflix have nailed it with this. Netflix have done this. They should do more stuff like this. I know, Shaun, you are constantly talking about how Netflix is like, when they make original stuff, when they make original films, you think that they're just making them because they're just kind of like, they just give the people a whole bunch of money to do stuff. And yeah, but when it comes to TV shows, there are some of them, like, Queen's Gambit, BoJack Horseman, and the Kominsky Method, where they hit on something. And a couple of weeks ago, you spoke about the Comeback Trail with Robert De Niro, Tommy Lee Jones, and Morgan Freeman playing, like, aging people. And I mentioned the Kominsky Method then, saying that I was in the middle of watching it. And what I love about this is that it is these old stars who used to be the hot young thing on the block and even as they grew older, I mean, Michael Douglas, the fact that he got married to Catherine Zeta-Jones, there was always the fact, this is a man who doesn't realize how old he is, doesn't realize how old he's getting. And the Kominsky Method is totally about Michael Douglas accepting the fact that I'm getting old. And he plays a guy called Sandy Kominsky, who is an actor. He was an actor, but he never made it big. And so he runs an acting studio. He runs an acting school in LA. And it's about him trying to do that. And it's just about, a lot of this is him and Alan Arkin fighting with each other and just going back and forth and sniping at each other. And their relationship is so good. It's one of those relationships, I think it's one of the all-time great screen buddy relationships, where you can sit down and listen to them talk for an hour about all sorts of random stuff. Usually it's about how big their prostates are getting. It's about the fact that they need to sort of they need to strengthen their pelvic floors. There's a whole conversation they have in a car about what sound their pelvic floor makes. And so, mine's a little bit creaky. It's I reckon it goes like and it's just really, really good. I mean, you have a great cast. You have in later seasons, Paul Reiser shows up. There's Sarah Baker plays Sandy Kominsky's daughter. You have Jane Seymour shows up at one point. Nancy Travis is there as a love interest of Michael Douglas' character, because even his character Sandy Kominsky, they talk about the fact that he never dates anybody his age, and he's finally dated somebody age appropriate, and that makes a big part of. There's 3 seasons. That makes a big part of the first season arc. But at the same time, as being a comedy about getting older and going all these different things and about how the world is changing around them and they don't really understand it and all, at the same time, because it's something about them getting older, I feel like it's also very real about some of the heartache that comes from getting older. So about having to deal with loss and having to deal with death. And there's characters who are quite significant to the plot who, over the course of the 3 seasons, die. And the way that it's dealt with and the way people actually go about it's not cheapened. It's not just made into a laugh or anything like that. The characters are allowed to actually go through something. But I think the Kominsky Method is a very, very, very good thing. One of the best things I've seen Michael Douglas do in years. Where there's a scene in the first season where he's running around a casino looking for the Alan Arkin character, and even the way he's running, you're like. It is totally. There is no vanity. There is no vanity. There's no. Oh, I want to look cool because I'm a big star. Don't you know who I am, Michael Douglas? I've got to look. But the way he's running around this place in his pajamas, trying to find his friend, you're just kind of like, oh my god, there is no vanity in this. This is just this guy accepting the fact I'm old. I'm old. I need to start acting my age. I absolutely love this. I love this show. I think it's brilliant. I give it a 4 out of 5.
Wow.
So I would recommend the Kominsky Method to anybody if for no other reason to see 2 old men sit down and talk about the fact that they're getting old. Who knew that could be so entertaining?
I might have to watch that. I'm starting to feel that myself.
Yeah, I was thinking that sure there might be a lot that you would identify with. There might be a lot that you identify with. I mean, hey, I'm as old as them, and I'm already beginning to think, yeah, I can see myself getting there. I can see myself getting there. So that is it for this week. Netflix versus cinema, and as I said. Yeah, Kominsky Method would have to have been a really, really, really bad to.
It has to be a 1.
Yeah.
I think Netflix and Friends blew the cinema out of the park this week, don't you?
Yeah.
It did a bit. I mean,
that's okay. Happens. Got to happen sometimes.
It's gonna happen sometimes. But the thing is, this is where we have to think. This is where we have to get a bit philosophical about it and say, sometimes it's not about quality. It's about what people will pay money to watch. And the fact that when I went to see Space Jam: A New Legacy, the place was packed for COVID times. It was the most packed cinema I've been in since cinemas came back, and it was a lot of parents with a lot of kids. And a lot of parents, a lot of kids. And even though there were kids getting up and going to the toilet multiple times during the screening of the film, there were parents who were sat down there on their phones because they were like, oh my god. One parent brought McDonald's in there, and you can see that you could just thinking, what the hell is this? You can see who Space Jam made this. You can see who Warner Brothers made this film for.
Yeah.
And Yeah, and if they make money, then cinemas will stay open. And off the rails, there's going to be a whole bunch of people who, because I know that we are a bit more, as big-headed as it sounds, we're a bit more discerning, and we are like a bit more, oh no, actually, I think that's not that good. There's still going to be loads of people who are going to go watch that film.
Yes.
It's still going to make its money. And if it means that it gives Sally Phillips enough money to show up in another film, well, I can handle that. So, yeah, but this week, cinema has not given us much. So, until next week, when I think we shall see the Suicide Squad. And I think, Shaun, you would have seen the Sparks documentary.
Yes.
The Sparks documentary. Until that time, it's a goodbye from me.
It's a goodbye for me.
And it's a goodbye from me.
Thank you very much for joining us.